This is Twit.
The EFF is going to be unveiling replacement firmware for a router, open source replacement firmware, which will have been security audited for a router they're not yet disclosing. So they haven't said what router, but I mean, it's going to be probably Linksys, I would imagine, since that tends to be the one that most of these alternative firmware platforms run on most easily. And so this initiative is intending to promote the replacement of firmware. And I mean, certainly it's the case that we've seen a lot of exploits recently, backdoors discovered in commercial router firmware provided by companies other than the router manufacturer. You know, they purchased a license for that to install on their routers, and then it turns out there was a little more than we were bargaining for, and thus things like DDWRT and Tomato are popular open source replacement firmwares for those routers. So now the EFF is saying, look, let's actively promote this. We want to make this available. Now, what their firmware does is a couple extra things. It creates, now it's not clear to me whether you can share a single router with a closed network. That is, whether it has a guest, a guest facility, the way
Comcast
I think
does
pretty
that.
much.
Yeah, and all routers,
yeah.
Many routers, modern routers have that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think all modern routers do now.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm not sure is that somewhere I read them saying get any cheap router and install this. Oh. So as opposed to installing this on the one you already have. So, but I don't know either way. Right. But there is a technology which I was surprised when I dug in that it was as widely available as it is, and that's EAP-TLS. EAP is Extensible Authentication Protocol, which it turns out is sort of hiding in all of our routers. It's really ubiquitous, but it's not sort of the default de facto standard. In order to get WPA or WPA2 certification, you have to have it in the router. So it's in all of our routers. And what that allows is it allows a client certificate to be installed in your phone or your iPad or your laptop, whatever you're going to be connecting to, or your desktop if you have a wireless connection to your desktop at home. And so what this does is EFF will be making this OpenWireless.org certificate, a client certificate, freely available. So everybody installs this, and the matching certificate will be already part of this firmware, this OpenWireless.org firmware that they will be promoting that people install in their routers. And what this means is that you still get encryption even though your access point is open. So strangers can connect. There's no portal. They're anti-portal. And they talk about how, frankly, that's sort of hostile. In their image of this future, lots of people are running this replacement firmware. There's also bandwidth protections so that you're able to say anybody using the OpenWireless.org. Oh, and that's the SSID, by the way. So, for example, when you're roaming, you would, hopefully you'd like bring up your list of available Wi-Fi, and there'd be a whole bunch of OpenWireless.org SSIDs, and you'd choose the one with the strongest signal strength, for example, and connect to it. no portal, no login terms of service or anything. They don't like that because they're liking the idea, for example, of people with ubiquitous sort of the Internet of Things devices, watches and phones and so forth, that are just hopping from one of these to the next, using the client certificate to be encrypted. So we're not talking the traditional unencrypted, easily sniffable open hotspot. But that's their intent, is to push this. Oh, and the way they talk about enhancing privacy is and of course we know who the EFF is. I'm glad they're there. They're, very pro privacy, anti, eavesdropping and civil rights and so forth. Of course, we talk about them as a consequence all the time. Their argument is their argument is we have to further back away from this idea that an IP represents a person. Their argument is, IPs are not personally identifiable, and we need to further break that association. If you do have an encrypted access point, if your Wi-Fi is encrypted, then you have a hard time making the argument that any misbehavior which is logged against that IP was not you, because it can't have been anybody else. So they're saying let's use this approach of sharing our IP address to further weaken the association.
Part of the concern we had with Comcast was the security issue.
Yep.
That there would be some leakage or some unknown exploit that would cause your local area network to be visible to somebody as a guest. So that would be that's the same, right?
Yep, but it's absolutely, you need to make sure that for example, in the way that the guest systems are set up now in contemporary routers, you're able to say whether or not you want the guest account to have visibility into your LAN and or to be able to bridge over to your other wireless.
Well, that's another thing I didn't think of, is the security of the person using the access point. You might be exposing your laptop to the owner, and if he were nefarious, that would be bad. So I think there's issues there. Otherwise, I think it's a great idea. Phone, F-O-N, has been doing this for some time. In fact, when they were first started as a company.
The Spanish telecommunications.
Yeah, and when the FON routers first came out, the whole premise was to create a mesh of shared internet access. And they actually, I was thinking Meraki. FON does it, but then Meraki, the Meraki routers, that was the idea. Meraki ended up getting sold to Cisco and is not doing that anymore. They went enterprise. But I think that this is not a new idea. I like the idea. I just don't know how it's different. I guess the biggest difference from Comcast is you don't have to be a Comcast customer. It's just you're sharing it with the world.
I like the idea, too, that the EFF is behind it. They're clearly good guys. I mean, if there's anyone I'm going to trust, it's them. They're saying this will be fully security audited. So, again, where we have people saying, well, I don't really understand DDWRT or Tomato, or I'm not comfortable with it. Well, here's something you could really, I think, be comfortable with. We'll have to take a look at it and see, what the features are, how it operates, and, really give it a good vetting. But, I'm with you. I really do like the idea of creating ubiquitous Wi-Fi.
Right.
And a mesh, but in a way that does not compromise the security of the owners. Now, one issue, and that you heard me mention in the EFF dialogue, is that the current terms of service of many, in fact, most big ones, they have a list on OpenWireless.org showing ISPs that don't do this, and they're not major ISPs. The typical default terms of service says you cannot knowingly, willingly share the bandwidth you're buying from us with other people. That is, it's for your use, your household's use. You can't make it broadly available. So that's where, the EFF understands that, and we're going to need some concession from ISPs backing down from that and saying, okay, fine, as long as you do it in a responsible way, we'll allow you to.